Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. It's the middle of the week, so you know what that means. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma, and that means I'm joined by my co-host, Terry Fletcher. How you doing, Terry?
I'm good. Coming in from California today.
Of course you are. And for those of you, would not have the privilege of having, before we went on the air, knowing that Terry sends me a screen capture of her Weather Channel app where it's practically 70 degrees in Southern California there, and I'm telling Terry that, yeah, there's snow falling from we're getting everything from freezing rain, the hail, the snow, where it's the apocalypse up here in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. And I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to discuss what you were wearing. You were talking about sending over some picture of like you in capris, which I assume is just to taunt me about the weather and nothing else. I don't know.
That was it, yeah.
I don't want to. Yeah. No, WTF? I don't want to see. I don't know that I want to see your legs, Terry. But it's good to know that
It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's in good shape there. If you have capris on, I don't shave my legs, and I wouldn't be wearing capris. Although there are some crazies out here, even in the 20 and 30 degree weather, that still wear shorts here. They still think it's shorts weather. I was actually surprised that you're not wearing like a wool turtleneck sweater or something of that effect.
Yeah. No, we actually enjoy our weather. We've been sick of the rain for the last, couple of weeks, so now we're happy to have it warm again.
Yeah, well, you need the rain in California, isn't that right?
Yeah, we do.
It's been dry, drought, all kind of different things. But not to get into any type of science, or we're talking too much about the weather on this. This is going to be the W in WTF is going to stand for weather, and then the T and the F will stand for Terry Fletcher. How about that? And then you could just have your own little segment there, like the local news. But I didn't get to catch up with you last week. I went on an epic rant about Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. Ben makes some comments about maybe there not being a next season, and Antonio Brown, of course, everyone thinks he's this big distraction all of a sudden and going to get traded. And to the effect of that, I've already said my piece. The catchphrase from that girl on Dr. Phil is cash me from last week, if you want to hear that. But Terry, you didn't get to have your opinion on that, so have your say, as you will.
Well, I think when we saw a piece this past week, I think it was Aditi Kikwala with NFL Network, where she kind of did an in-locker room, who's your favorite player, who does everybody love, just kind of among the players. And one thing that I thought was funny about AB is that somebody had said, I don't remember who it was, one of the players had said, well, he's just one of the guys that really annoys Tomlin, talking about Tomlin's favorite is Timmons. And so then today, Art Rooney was chatting, and they just did a Periscope Live on that as well with Missy Matthews. And he said, yeah, he's a little annoying, but with the emphasis on little, he's not going anywhere. So I think he's the brat of the team. And I say that with love, that he's just, you want to go knock it off, when he was doing his 15-yard penalty touchdown dances. I mean, I enjoyed them, but then the after effect hurt, and, then his whole Facebook Live and his alleged pouting and that kind of thing. So I just think that he likes the big stage, and, he's not going anywhere. He's worth every penny, and he's still a brat. So.
He's like the little brother, basically, and he is younger than some of these guys. So, just to paraphrase some of the things I said, I mean, he's guilty of just having fun, and having fun is celebrating and dancing, doing these Pepsi commercials, Dancing with the Stars. He's not out there doing drugs. He's not, taking steroids. He's not getting into altercations at nightclubs or shooting himself in the foot. Or
he's not getting suspended, and that's the thing. He's on the field. The only time he wasn't is when Burfict tried to, take him out last playoff game last season. So, I mean, that for everything to everybody says about him is his work ethic is stellar, and when we play, he brings it, and he never holds out in training camp, which people thought he might because of the contract, possible talks. But he's playing his contract. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's one of the lower paid wide receivers in the league. So now he's the Peyton Manning of all the commercials. He just is who he is, and you either embrace him or you don't. And I don't personally think any of our fans, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this, but I think it's hard to call yourself a real Pittsburgh Steeler fan if you're saying trade AB. So, he is part of the glue of that team. Ben is up top there, but without the 3 Bs, we aren't who we are. So.
Yeah, certainly a WTF. And here's another thing that I pointed out last year, or maybe, it was last year. It was the beginning of the season, is Mike Wallace went and signed with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, if Mike Wallace ends up playing through his contract for this upcoming 2017 season, and assuming AB is not restructured, we're just assuming the contracts as they are for 2017, I think there's something like a 7 or 8, maybe 7 and change to $8 million difference between what Antonio Brown has made over his contract versus what Mike Wallace has made over the several contracts he's had, including the Miami Dolphins, the Minnesota Vikings, and Baltimore Ravens. And most of that can be attributed to the signing bonus, the guaranteed money that the Dolphins were still paying Mike Wallace a year ago. So to be completely honest, when people break down and say, did we get a deal or a steal? Well, we didn't pay for Antonio Brown as he is today. We paid for Antonio Brown what he could become back in 2012. So,
right.
Hey, 12 or 13. I'm trying to think now. I think Wallace left in 13. So, just seriously, it's a WTF if you want him traded. A WTF to all the people who tried to say that he was complaining about not getting the ball.
Well, I think he was. Whether he was or he wasn't, I think he was. I think him not getting the ball had something to do with the fact that we weren't winning the ball. So, I know I was complaining, get AB the ball. They were sort of double teaming him, but I saw some windows there, and he was open on a couple plays that I think we were forcing things, and it looked like, Ben was probably reading too much of the playbook that I don't know if he was getting frustrated where he didn't do a lot of his own, no huddle things. I keep going back to that, WTF 1 inch on the yard line where he didn't do a sneak where he could have. So I think that if he was complaining, I think he was justified in it. I think people need to stop saying that he was being selfish. He was being hungry for the win and wanting a ring. So, I think he was still celebrating D'Angelo's touchdown. I think when people put it in perspective, they were saying, or actually put it out there, they were saying he was whining when D'Angelo got a touchdown. He absolutely was not. Was he pouting when the ball wasn't sent his way when it was open? Probably.
I think it's frustration. I think these guys, they wanted more. They knew they could have done better, and they didn't. And just going back to that play, like on the, if you want to, we'll just call it the 1 inch line or whatever. The Steelers had a 3rd and 1 from 5 or the 6 on a play earlier that was the one that D'Angelo, the one you just referenced, the one that D'Angelo ended up getting more than 5 and went in for the touchdown, stretching out. And they went to that left side of the line, and it was almost like almost kind of a misdirection because the way Ben hands off the ball, it was like a counter play, basically. So they tried to run that same play again, and it didn't work. And that's kind of like the fool me once thing. They got the Patriots on a good one there where D'Angelo gets 5+ on a 3rd and 1, and they get the touchdown. And then that one, they got stopped short. So I understand the play calling there. I think a lot of what has to deal with it is either in the coaching or even in Ben or the other players' heads. Is if you remember, Ben checked out of a run against Kansas City and threw a pick right down there near the end zone a week earlier. So I could certainly understand you're overthinking it, and I think that's just one of those things. When the Patriots aren't making mistakes, they made mistakes a week earlier. They cleaned up some of their stuff. I think the biggest WTF, and you had mentioned in the article a week ago, was losing Le'Veon Bell, and it's like, well, really? I mean, without a doubt, and we're talking MVPs and stuff and awards over here behind the scenes at Steel City Underground, and we're going to be doing some of that stuff next week. But overwhelmingly, I think all of us feel that Bell was the MVP for the team. He was certainly voted that by his teammates, and losing him practically in the first quarter and only getting 6 carries in that game effectively hurt overall any type of offensive game plan that you had. So moving forward, we got a lot to talk about, believe it or not, but just one last one, and we may have forgotten, and I just wanted to make note, was the other conference championship game was Aaron Rodgers getting a face mask penalty called against him.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's one of the most ridiculous things that you'd ever seen, and I don't know. I shook my head. If you haven't seen it, look for a YouTube clip. It just makes you wonder about the officiating sometimes. We try not to. I know what it's like to have the thankless job of being a referee. I try not to criticize them too much, but that was definitely a WTF if there ever was one.
It was. I mean, I hear the phrase a lot of the guys use as far as ticky-tack, calls and stuff. And even the commentators are like, are you kidding? And so you just, when they replayed it over and over, and then the look on his face, like, you called it on me. It was actually just kind of a funny moment because, they anoint him basically as the second coming and Brady is the first. So it's just, when those two get anything against them, anything that doesn't go their way, and they both kind of whine about it, Brady more than Rodgers, but it just you have to look up and go, did they just call that on him? So that to me was the WTF moment, not necessarily the call, but the amusing part of the fact that they actually called it. So that was what was funny to me.
Yeah, that I guess that is it. You're like, no, this can't possibly happen, and I'm surprised he wasn't fined.
I know.
But you know what? Shazier was not fined, so I guess the world might be coming around here. Everyone's getting level heads. We had one game played this week, if you want to call it that, and that was the Pro Bowl and all the activities. I was long-winded on ways to fix this game when I did the episode on it last week. It was absolutely miserably boring to the point of being unwatchable, and then it became even more miserable because Kirk Cousins is just the guy can't be any more hot or cold within the same game. The guy, it just bewilders me. And you know who I like? I've said this before maybe, but Landry Jones reminds me of Kirk Cousins. The guy could be, 10 for 10
flashes.
And complete these long passes that are on the money and all. I mean, the game winner he had against Cleveland in OT again with Kobe Hamilton, and there's another guy, he catches the ball there for the game winner and then completely miss and be off target or throw a pick or something. And
I think with these guys though, Joe, I think these guys need playmakers to make them look good. They don't make their guys look good, like Ben, like Brady, like Aaron, like they all make their guys look good. Even remember Peyton. These guys need their players to make them look good, and that's the biggest problem is that because they don't lead them, they don't do what they need to do to get those windows to make those and all make those phenomenal catches. They have to make them to make their catches that may be a little substandard or not on the target to make the quarterback look good, and that's a tough place to be when you're in a Pro Bowl that, first of all, nobody's blocking to hurt anybody. I don't know if you heard the audible on, since you mentioned Shazier earlier, when he got that, who was the one that caught the ball and he, came after him? I think it was Baldwin. And basically you could hear the snap on TV, but they had an audible down there where you could hear it. And I think they might put it on Sound Effects Pro Bowl. And it basically said, hey, don't hit so hard. And I was like, did somebody just say that? I replayed it over and over. They actually said at the Pro Bowl, hey, don't hit so hard. And he looked at him like, I'm just playing football. So when you think of that and you hear that and you start laughing and go, Cousins did what he, WTF, he actually should be happy he was one of the third or fourth alternates to make the Pro Bowl. So it's just funny.
Well, that's exactly it. You're saying, these guys need, instead of making everybody look good, they need guys in order to look good, and that's kind of sad when Kirk Cousins looks subpar in a Pro Bowl where these are supposed to be the best of the best players, even with alternates. I mean, Phillip Rivers certainly didn't have a great year. He threw the most picks he's ever thrown in a single season in his career, and he makes the Pro Bowl as an alternate, and he still looked like a Pro Bowl player out there. But yeah, Cousins just did not. Shazier looked phenomenal. It was almost like people had never seen Ryan Shazier in their life. If you were on Twitter that night, people were like, "Oh, he's a star," and it's like, "Where you been?" I mean, we know this in Pittsburgh. So that's why he's in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, but in Pittsburgh, we know him as our shirtless wonder. So especially if you're female, so
yeah,
it's a little different out there. He did it there too.
Yes, he did. That's what I was going to say. But the skills competition I thought was good, except for it looked like it was like heavily edited to fit within an hour. I think if it were more like live, it had almost a sitcom feel. Like if you've watched Friends or Seinfeld with piping in the fake crowd noise and stuff, that's the way it felt. I think it was still fun. It looked like American Gladiators at times. The drone drop thing, they got their big the money shot, I guess is what you want to call it. I don't want to explain what that means in other terms, but Odell Beckham catching the ball that like almost sails over his head, and however many miles per hour it's falling from 120 feet in the air or whatever from the drone, and they got that. They'll be able to show that for years now, I think. And the quarterback thing was really cool too. Phillip Rivers and Dak Prescott and these guys, they're breaking like the paper targets and that. It was really neat. I'd like to see more of that. I don't even know that they publicized it enough that people knew it was on TV. And then, of course, the game itself, they went back to this conference thing. They still had like honorary captains. I really don't know what Jerome Bettis did on the sideline, but I had a thought for that. And it was a thought I didn't mention, and the reason I wanted to bring it up now, I was talking at work. I have a clueless coworker who sometimes asks some questions that I'm just like, really? He asked if anybody had watched the Pro Bowl, and then he asked if there was any stakes for it. And I said, well, aside from one team, the winning team making more money than the losing team, about double. I think it's like $60,000 per player to $30,000 per player, which drop in the bucket for guys that are in the Pro Bowl. Most of those guys are big money contract players. I said, you know what? Like you said, these guys don't hit so hard. Well, either just make it a flag football game. I'd seen someone, it might have been Jeff Hartman at Behind the Steel Curtain, one of my buddies offline here, that said make it 7-on-7 or something. But then I was thinking about the college overtime rule and how they get the ball at like the 25 and try and punch it in. Why don't they just make some small side squad teams, maybe 4 teams, split these conference teams in half, or allow, they had 4 captains, legends captains, let these guys pick 4 teams, let them play a round robin, and 2 best teams play at the end for a championship. Let them play for like 30 minutes or something, or 20 minutes, and they play each other, and you can make it flag, you can make it contact, you can make it 7-on-7, do whatever. I think that would be far more interesting to see the combinations of players you put together like that, and whether they could score on those opposing defenses with a short field, than trying to do something that resembles a game. I mean, sorry, punters, you're probably not going to, punters and long snappers wouldn't, make the trip maybe anymore unless they do a punting competition. That might be fun too. Let them hit some targets or something.
I think the thing you have to look at too is if you actually, watched any part of the game. I actually had a really hard time after halftime. It was just so terrible and boring. But even when the extra point was kicked, the guys didn't line up. They just stood there looking at the extra point go through. There was just no effort. The only person I saw giving effort at all would have been Shazier. I did see some effort coming from Alex Smith. I thought he wanted to look good out there. I think also Phillip Rivers, but I saw DeCastro make a couple of good blocks. I'm not just, saying our players, but
you're a homer.
Yeah. When I see Travis Kelce, get MVP, I'm like, seriously? Okay. Well, that's like, but that's fine. That's his, participation trophy, since he didn't get past a certain game that we won't keep revisiting, but it's just the dodgeball thing. And then the on-field fan tackled by Ezekiel Elliott, and now Richard Sherman saying that $30,000 isn't enough. It should be like an $800,000. It should be a game check, like what he makes, I guess, approximately $800,000 a game. And I'm like, dude, you play what, 9 minutes total in the game, and nobody's really tackling you or wanting to get the ball away from you. What he's making it sound like it's like when he wouldn't speak to the the media a couple of weeks ago because he said, you don't deserve my presence. I'm like, WTF, God, when you love yourself that much, I mean, you always have to be humbled. I'm a public speaker, and I make a decent living. And when somebody from an association says, hey, can you speak for us, but here's our budget, and it's something that's with my peers, I'm absolutely willing to do that. That's my part. But, and this is supposed to be about entertainment apparently. And well, it better be about entertainment. It can't be about competitiveness. But, it's all about the money for him. It's all about who he is. It's not about playing with guys that you never really get to hang out with. To me, it's a cool thing, but it's not a competitive thing. If you're a football fan, it's painful to watch. But if you're a sports fan, it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's like the all-stars in baseball and, stuff like that.
I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I do believe these guys get they're definitely put up for no cost. They're not paying that out of pocket. They're put up, right. More than likely are put up at Disney, I think, has the Wide World of Sports or whatever it is. It's part of an offshoot resort that's there. I'm pretty sure that's where the Pro Bowl festivities took place. And I'm pretty sure that their families are included in on that too. So he should include that as part of his, game check. And like I said, yeah, it might not $800,000. I do think it's a little bit of drop in the bucket, but most people don't realize that the teams in the playoffs, the checks for their checks are nowhere near the game checks they get for the regular season. So are they playing just for money, or are they playing for some pride there too? So I think he's a little full of it. And I didn't actually mention the thing with fixing the Pro Bowl. Some of that, there was another site that actually ran and looked like they actually copied some of the stuff that I had said about that. But, the dodgeball thing was perfect, and I think they should expand on that. And it was really cool because it was like T.Y. Hilton versus 5 other people on the other team, and they had to make the course a little bit shorter, their time or a clock or whatever ran out. And he was hanging in there too. He took it so seriously, and it was fun to see these guys out of their element. There was the other thing with the push-pull. I can't remember who it was, maybe the NFC guys, and they had to push this cart, and it was stuck on the rails. It literally wouldn't move. And they had Dean Blandino there, who is the vice president of officiating for the NFL. Now, Dean, I don't know where they found this referee shirt for him, but it was a double XL for a tiny guy. And it was just swimming on him. And I'm like, you think of you see these referees, all the head referees in the NFL are in phenomenal shape. They look like they should be on TV. They have the presence, everything else. Ed Hockley is jacked. Ed Hockley, looks like the thing. Yeah. He looks like he's wearing actual zebra stripes, like they're painted onto his body. And Dean shows up on TV. Looks like he hasn't shaved in 2 weeks, and has his cap and that on. And he's saying, "Oh, we're going to give them another chance." He's actually officiating this event, but it was where did they find this jersey for you, Dean? I mean, he looked so out of place. It wasn't even funny, and it was funny. So it was a WTF there. So yeah, the Pro Bowl. I don't know. They got to keep trying, and if people really don't care about it, I think I said 20, 30 minutes. It's probably too long if they did a game. College, I think, is 10 or 15 minutes, that overtime period, and I think that's really all they need. Just give us a little taste of football, and that these guys don't play enough in these games anyway, so I think their pay is consummate with their actual work, and it would still be, even if you played these little small-sided games. I think that would be kind of neat. Speaking of other things going on, we have another game coming up on Sunday. One I'm probably going to watch more for the commercials. I see a lot of Steelers fans using hashtag temp Falcons fan, which I think is hilarious. And but it was totally, this opening night stuff is just so cringeworthy, and I just gag. It isn't a wonder that Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch, was ignoring these questions, or Richard Sherman answers some of the things the way he does, because they're asking Tom Brady if he would accept the Super Bowl trophy from Roger Goodell. Why wouldn't you? He's a professional. Yeah. They're both professionals. Goodell's just doing his job, even if we don't like him. And then on top of that, you've got people asking Devontae Freeman about his contract situation. You think he really cares about his contract in the week leading up to the biggest game in his career to this point? Some of the questions they blow my mind. I mean, I don't know. I can't get a credential to the Super Bowl, nor can you, Terry. I just wonder where they find some of these other people.
Well, I think it's funny because I like it when the kids ask the questions, and they do that on Wednesdays. And so they ask things, I remember Tom Brady a couple of years ago, they asked something like, is your wife really nice and that pretty in person? And and you just sit there and you're like, okay, yeah, you know what? Let's ask these questions because the actual sports reporters they let in these things, their questions aren't any better. And so it's just some of these really cute things. So what kind of slippers do you wear when you're at home? Things like that. So, they get a little bit crazy and a little bit funny, but yeah, it's funny though, because with all the things leading up to it, and I'm just going to do a little bit here. I know you don't like it when I get political, but just something funny is that with just the political climate, everybody knows what we're talking about. We don't have to talk about it, but the rise up hashtag, like Pittsburgh Steelers has Here We Go. Rise up is Atlanta Falcons. And with the political things going on, people were using that and tagging the Falcons in it. And it's not for that.
Yeah.
So Atlanta had to send out a statement saying, stop using our hashtag.
Yeah,
That's a WTF moment if there ever was one.
Every team has one of these special hashtags. If you hadn't seen it or you're not a regular Twitter user, and the Steelers one was hashtag Here We Go, and it would put the Steelers logo behind it. Well, with some of the various protesting or marching or whatnot that's out there, a lot of people were using it as means of protest. But the Rise Up has the Atlanta Falcons logo behind it, and it was associated with them. And this isn't the first time that this happened with like the New York Mets and somebody else, not just in sports but everywhere. I want to say Starbucks had like an epic fail on hashtags and things too. So I get it. Being a social media marketing guy by trade, I got a kick out of that like nothing else. Yeah. It was just,
it got like over a million, what they say, 1.3 million tweets that had nothing to do with the team.
Yeah.
So, if you were a temporary Atlanta Falcons fan before, use that hashtag. But that was funny to me. I was just like, oh shoot, they're being tagged. Oh, they're just like, oh, stop the madness. So that was really funny.
Well, real quick, the very last one, I nearly forgot. We have one former Pittsburgh Steeler as a Hall of Fame finalist. They choose on Saturday 15 finalists remaining, I believe, is the number of modern era people that are up on the ballot. They include Morton Anderson, Tony Boselli, Isaac Bruce, Don Coryell, Terrell Davis, Brian Dawkins, Joe Jacoby, Ty Law, John Lynch, who just got a new job with the 49ers as GM, Kevin Maui, Terrell Owens, Jason Taylor, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Kurt Warner, and our own beloved Alan Faneca. I wonder in his second year of eligibility if he really has a shot against some of these names. It's going to be tough.
I think he does. I think he does this year. I do. I'll be surprised if Terrell Davis gets it, but I will and I won't be. I think Kurt Warner is just somebody everybody just loves, especially with his media presence, because he's very, very neutral in how he talks about quarterbacks and teams. And, and when he does say anything, he doesn't even say it negatively. He just says it matter-of-factly. So I hope he gets in. I think his story is incredible. But I think Faneca will get in. I have a feeling, but I've had that feeling before, and Bettis got in the year after I had that feeling. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you know what? It's who you're up against, who's deserving, and who can be your headliner for TV. You got the guy that's always on last, like Jerome Bettis, Brett Favre, the previous year. So I think when you look at that list, I think it's pretty much whittled down to LaDainian Tomlinson and Kurt Warner. Are you going to put both of them on the same one? Who are you looking at that becomes eligible next year that can be your ratings getter? I mean, Morton Anderson, well-deserved. All these guys are deserving. There's no question about it. Terrell Owens would probably get you ratings, but I think a lot of people feel off-the-field stuff may keep him out. But, I mean, I don't think anybody's really going to be that excited. They're not going to put top billing for Joe Jacoby or Alan Faneca or even Brian Dawkins. Now, Terrell Davis possibly. Depends which fan bases that they want to try and get in there. I think Kurt Warner, or I think it's a coin flip, Kurt Warner or Tomlinson, and maybe the next one of those two gets in the following year. Or maybe they're both in, and they kind of co-headline this thing. I could see being on the undercard here, maybe Alan Faneca could could happen. I think I have a good feeling about that too, Terry. So once again, thank you for joining me. It's always fun, and I hope we have enough to talk about in the coming weeks that we can continue keeping this thing rolling, or at least we'll try and do every other week or something like that.
I think it's great. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we can toast to a Falcons victory, because I don't think either of us want to see Tom Brady and Bill Belichick surpass Chuck Noll's accomplishments with 4 Super Bowl wins. Put that under your hat, and maybe on Monday we all get our wish. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.